ability in Visual Basic, PHP, JavaScript, HTML, and other coding skills. He also designed microprocessors, AVRO microprocessors, microchips, and what have you. So we are rich and ready for this program. Now, without much ado, I want to now. Can you still hear me, please? Without much ado,
yes, we hear you just fine.
All right. Without saying much, I want to welcome our very first speaker for the day, which is another person than Dr. Helga, to actually take us. She wants to launch us into the future. So I'm ready to be launched into the future. She's a futurist, so let's get into the future, everyone. So let's welcome her as she takes the floor. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm not sure the message went through because I had a problem with the microphone. I'm not a doctor. I just have to admit that I just don't want to appear more than I am. Thank you so much. I've studied for a PhD, but I haven't actually stayed for the last semester to gain the title. However, all the other things are true about me. I am a futurist. I am a practicing futurist, and this is a lovely job and a good way to approach any problem we have or any situation we have. Let me share my presentation. Do you see my presentation, please?
I believe it's coming up.
Right. Do you see it?
Not yet, ma'am.
Not yet. It says to me that I'm sharing. Maybe I have connection issues.
Okay, you're sharing.
I hope not. Do you see my? You don't see my presentation, right?
We haven't seen it yet.
Because it says to me that I am sharing.
Oh, please proceed, ma'am.
Let me try it again.
Proceed.
What about now? Do you see?
Yes, we can see your slide now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So, the title of the presentation is The Role of Future Studies in Technology Development. And I will talk quickly about future, the future skills, future technology, and how do we relate to all this, and what's the best way to approach it. So when we are dealing with the future, we are dealing with uncertainty because we don't know what is happening and we don't know what are the trends and what are the future trends going to be. And for that, we have a wide range of methodology in future studies to what is the best way to approach the future in the present. We also deal with chaos because many of the systems that we are dealing with, societal system, climate, or even the human body, they are chaotic. Chaotic systems are very much sensitive to the initial starting position, and any little change can cause major disruptions. And so when we are dealing with chaotic systems, it is very important that we cannot only use quantitative methods. We also have to use qualitative approaches to find new futures. And what we are looking for are weak signals. They are the future potential trends. And we are trying to find weak signals that might develop into new trends in the future and might disrupt the present trends. And we are trying to find the weak signals. And these weak signals, they appear something ridiculous, the definition of weak signal is actually that it might seem ridiculous, it might seem something that the others find it embarrassing or even a taboo, but they are really the good weak signals because they are the ones that might going to bring some change. So the future technology is about, I would say, the main idea is about co-creation. Co-creation because we are collaborating with each other much more than before. It's much more participative. And also we are co-creating with machines now. So the idea about AI is that that it is possible to create self-developing AI. However, the problem is that we also want to know what is happening inside an AI system. And that's actually one of the main problems now when we think about AI from the ethical point of view. Should we let it develop, or should we try to control what is going on inside so we actually understand what is happening and why it is happening? The future technology is also very much influenced by the virtual world that is happening, and it's quickly developing, and all the mixed reality that is available today. However, that's also causing another kind of uncertainty in our lives, that we don't even know anymore what is real and what is not. There's so many fake news and fake videos and deep fakes that we have now this problem that I would say it was.
No, we can see the screenshot of ourselves, but we can't see your slide.
Oh.
What I believe happened is instead of sharing your screen, you shared the last application, which was this program. You may want to try unsharing and then share the entire screen instead of the application.
We cannot. Yes. Thank you so much.
All right.
Can you, I think I was on page 3, 4. If you maybe move it that we can see the entire slide. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here.
Yes, thank you. So that's where we were at the co-creation and the future technologies, and what describes future technology that's co-creation, that we are collaborating globally and also with machines. Regarding, and can we move down one slide, please? Thank you. Regarding the future workspace, what is one of the biggest issues or challenges is that instead of human resources, we can say that it's going to be human and machine resources. The whole spectrum there is changing, because it's not the resources are not just the humans anymore, it's also machines. And we have to consider how can we make the intelligibility work, and how that means how can we understand each other with the machines, how can we communicate, how can we transfer the data, how can we make it understandable, how can we create software and a kind of digital tools that are readable and interpretable for humans. And the other way around as well, how can we make sure that human interaction is understandable and processable for machines? Also, thank you. Also, about when we are talking about the future workspace, how do we design it? We have to make sure that we are taking into account what are the best affordances. like whatever we have at the moment, how can we use that, and whatever the tools we have, how can we make them efficient, and how can we optimize them. Those who have more experience in industry or even government or any kind of job, they know that some workplaces are really not using time and resources well. And there are many overlaps in jobs, and there are many lost resources, I would say. And in the future, it would be optimal that we are actually taking care of what we have, and we are optimizing the processes in most workplaces. Thank you. Can we please move down to the future skills? So what are the future skills that we require for this? It's mostly the soft skills that we need, that will be emphasized. It's already a big topic and big issue. Soft skills that we can communicate, and leadership is well balanced, and for that, actually, what is an emerging topic is the creatives. So there is this idea that there is a creative class that will be that is and will be more important in the future. The people who are more educated and have diplomas, and they are the ones who are actually creating new futures and new ideas, and their role is emphasized in the future. And we have to make sure that we keep them engaged, and creativity is still has a place. So new forms of knowledge is also emerging, because if you think about it, we are gathering knowledge in very different ways than before. 20 years ago was very different how we thought about education. We didn't have Coursera, or we didn't have Udemy, and now you can gain diplomas through online learning. Also, COVID majorly shifted the whole education sector, because before we weren't thinking about that online education, full online education might be possible. However, COVID taught us that it's possible. It was something that was forced on us. We didn't choose. However, now the big question is whether we should return to the physical, or we just continue more with the online education. So this also creates new forms of knowledge, and what is required is more imagination, and to create more futures, and literacy, which is referring not just for the basic literacy that reading, writing, which is still important, and there are some regions in the world that are not performing well. That's what the SDGs are taking care of, but also AI literacy, or computer literacy, or futures literacy. Futures literacy is referring to the capability that every person is able to imagine what's going to happen in the future, and we might use that in order to create our own future, and in order to think about our own actions in the present. And automation is also something that will affect what are the human skills that are required in the future. Can we move down, please? Thank you. So what's the role of future studies in all this? When we talk about future studies, we are using the word plural, the word future in plural, because we believe that there are multiple futures. So future studies is a kind of unique academic and practical discipline, because it deals with something that doesn't exist. The future does not exist. However, we have some traces of it in the present, and also what we are doing in the present is majorly affecting what are going to be our future. The future is always alternative, because there are multiple futures, and there is always a choice, and there are always which we can choose from. So if you move down to the next slide, please. We can, this graph is quickly summarizing how do we think about the future. So instead of extrapolating the domain into the future and using the past and the present data and making a linear or qualitative projection of the domain, for example, what's going to be the future of the cars, and then extrapolating the speed or extrapolating some numbers that we can describe a car today. Instead of that, we are actually trying to map the domain in the present based on societal, technological, environmental, economic, and political drivers in the present, and then shift those into the future. Then explore what is going to be the future based on the shift of those drivers, because many things that we are thinking about, even technological development, is majorly based on also the societal issues. It's really much important how society deals with and accepts and adopts certain technologies. It's also very important that we are always considering the environment. We are always considering economics and also politics, because we cannot neglect that, for example, legislation moves very, very slowly. A good example is AI ethics, that AI is developing so quickly and it has so much effect on us that actually the laws cannot catch up quick enough. The UN has released soft laws, so recommendations about AI ethics last year, and also the EU has the AI ethic committee, and they are applying ethic principles. However, these might be a bit too late regarding what's going on today and how the data is used and might affect the users today. Thank you. And I think there is one last slide of this presentation. It's a quote by a futurist Jim Dator. He's a founding father, one of the founding fathers of future studies. Any useful statement about the future should seem first ridiculous. So whenever we talk about the future, don't be afraid that it might sound a bit odd or awkward. You might be at the right track. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please tell me.
All right. Is there any question?
Overall, what do you feel is the biggest change coming up in the future for the items that you just discussed? What do you think is the one biggest motivating factor?
Societal change. Society is changing really quickly and might not be exactly how we think about it, because a lot of sciences are dominated by, I think, Western approaches, and it might neglect some of the other areas of the world. And we have started the decolonization, and we have started so many. We have started to counter that. However, I think that some of our expectations might be still off, and we might be surprised that some societies are not responding to certain factors as we might expect.
Oh, wow. That's quite an interesting one. I noticed some things here. I will reiterate them after this session. The future is in plural because there are so many futures for us to fit into. There is the future of jobs has now been automated, and we have so many things now. So if you have any question, please just you can raise your hand. I'll let you speak, or do very well to note it down. Just note it somewhere. So after the sessions, will take everything together. I believe the speakers will not be leaving us anytime soon. I don't know, Miss Hager, are you leaving us anytime soon?
Yes, I apologize. I have to leave because I'm in a business trip in the Middle East and I have to go in 5 I wanted to say, just reflect to what you said, the future jobs. It's a very big shift that we have the gig economy for 10 years now, or a bit late, but in the last 10 years, it has majorly increased. That we don't half of the people in some countries are not employees anymore, but they are interim workers, they are contract workers, and that really shifts society as well, really shifts the economy, and really shifts so many other things. So there are many elements that has major shifts, and whenever we talk about the future, even of technology, we have to consider that.
Oh, interesting. This is very, very interesting. I'm actually in the future already because I'm hosting this meeting right from the comfort of my room. That is the future
Yeah.
for you. So thank you very much, ma'am. If you have any question after now, you can get it across to me. I'll compile the questions and send them across to her. Then she answer them, and I can make a live video on them for you to also view them too. So thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So you can still join us live because we're streaming live on Facebook. So you can still join the meeting at the comfort of your meeting also. Thank you very much, ma'am. All right. So people, you can see that the future is here, and the future is for you and I to fit into. So without wasting much time, I'll be the last speaker because our guest speaker that ought to take this presentation now, she's currently indisposed, but she's with us. She's live with us, but she's not uh, uh, in a position to speak to us right now. So her slide is currently with me, and I'll present the slide to us. So very, very, very fast. Let's invite our next speaker, my father, my mentor, Jerry Rutherford, to kick us into the next phase, and I'll come in last in the question and answer sessions and questions. Thank you very much, sir. You're next, sir.
So, what did you want to discuss?
All right. Now, what we'll be discussing is creativity, technology, innovation. What is the what is the mindset that creatives should have? What are some of those mindsets, or what are those prerequisites we must have before going into tech? What are some of them, sir?
Well, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. Nothing really gets invented unless there's some impetus to have a need for it. So, for example, this meeting, it never existed until one day somebody said, I need to talk to people that are in different I am. How can we do that? And then people worked on it and came up with, the Google Meets. So for any given situation, the technology or the whole pattern of how things move is based on what the needs are. And then as society comes up with new needs, then people will find a way to fill those needs.
Well, interesting. No, we most persons on this call, they are not actually into tech per se. Some of them want to get into tech, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to get into it. And from your resume, you have both software and hardware skills. Now, what would you advise them to look out for in picking a tech skill?
Well, the thing is, the first thing you have to do is you have to keep an open mind. We'll go back in my history, for example. Here in the United States, I decided to join the military because the military was offering training. And my mindset was that I was going to go in and I was going to learn computers. I thought computers were interesting, and that's where I was going to focus. And then I walked in and they said, yeah, we've got 1,000 computer people. You can go into that if you want, but we're really hurting for people to work on radar. We're really hurting for people to work on aircraft. And I was like, well, sucks to be you. I'm going to do computers. And they said, you don't understand. We're hurting so badly that we'll give you a bonus if you go into that career field. And they made me a very attractive offer. And I said, I'll do that. So my thought was that I was going to be on this path. And instead, I went on this path. Because of that, the computer market in the civilian world became saturated. And many of my friends that went into computers were unemployed. The things did not work out well for them. They had a very hard time. Meanwhile, I picked up skills for radar, and I picked up skills for communications in general, which became highly valued. And as a matter of that, I'm in a career field that is, unique. It's off to the side. And so at my job, when other people will say, wow, there's really hardly anything to do, or it's a shame things have slowed down. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm working 9 hours a day or 10 hours a day. There is no slowdown for me. And that all happened from something that happened many years ago, because I had an open mind and I was able to change what my perception of my future would be. So I would say the most important thing is to keep an open mind. Don't say, I'm going to do this and only this. Keep an open mind to other paths, because sometimes those pathways will open up and they'll lead to a greater future.
Wow. Keep an open mind. Very, very important point. When getting into tech, to get started, you must keep an open mind. Thank you very much, sir. Now, over time, I've gone through your resume, I've gone through some of your videos, your design. What do you think are some of the limitations that actually make young men and women, or young boys and girls, not actually get into tech? And what are some of the solutions to these limitations you've seen over time?
The biggest limitation, believe it or not, is this. So I have about 20 students in Nigeria and in Guyana. I've got a couple others in some other countries that I help. And what will happen is they don't apply the thought process. So, for example, my students in Guyana, they had a circuit and they were going to hook up an LED and make it light up. And they hooked it up and it went poof and it burned it up. And I'm like, well, what do you think the cause is? And they were like, I don't know, don't have a clue, I don't know. And I'm like, you sure that you've got, the right? Yeah, sure. Yeah, we do. And they never did any research. And I said, show me a picture of the resistor that you have. And when they showed me the picture of the resistor, I looked at the color code on it, and it was a 10 ohm resistor. And I said, what kind of a resistor is that? And they said, oh, it's 1,000 ohms. I said, are you sure? Did you verify it? Did you test it? And they said, no, it says 1,000 right here on this piece of paper. I said, get an ohm meter and measure it. Oh, well, it's just a fake resistor. I said, no, it's not a fake resistor. Do the research. And so we went through the color codes again, which they told me they know. Yes, we know the color codes. We understand the color codes. They didn't. And they said, well, this can't be right because it says it's 10. I said, well, let's do the math. What would happen if it was 10? Here's the current that an LED can take. If it was 10, we'd have that much power. And what would that do? It would burn it up. And what happened? It burned it up. That can't be it. I said, work out the numbers. Let's find the numbers. They put it in and it worked. They were the limiting factor. They had the tools. I can't help everybody in the world, but they were like, we wish we had this and this and this. And I said, I can afford that. Let me send that to you. So they had the tools in their hands. The problem was they didn't go that extra step of actually doing the research. If you want to be successful, you have to do the research. You have to do the learning. You notice I don't even have to reach very far. And this whole meeting is impromptu. You see this? When I was a teenager, riding on the bus to school every day, I read these. And that's how I learned electronics, because I had the interest. And not only did I have the interest, I knew that it was important to learn it fully. So, whenever I got a couple of extra dollars, I would buy a chip. I would buy a component and I would test it and I would work with it. And sometimes I burned them out. And when I did, I was like, why? What happened? And I stepped. And as a matter of that, that's how I learned. I keep a notepad on my desk at all times. And when I have an idea for a circuit or, I'm working with a student or something, I write it down. That's important. A lot of people don't do that. They say, oh, I'm going to do this. But then as soon as they hit something and it doesn't work, they go, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do this. And if that's the case, you will not succeed. I don't care what opportunities you have in front of you, you will not succeed. The most important thing is to find out what went wrong and to do the research. When Edison was working with the electric light, he didn't just say, you know what, I've got this container, I'm going to put a vacuum in it, it's going to work. He burned it up hundreds of times. And he said to somebody that I have not failed. This is just a 1,000-step process. I'll get there eventually. And eventually he did. And that's the mindset that you have to happen. An example is for me, I'm in the process right now for our local group. We're building a wind tunnel. We want to teach students how the wing works and what a stall is and how all that works. To do that, I need to build a physical wind tunnel. And then in that wind tunnel, I need to have electronics to measure the lift and the drag and all of that kind of stuff. I had this chip, an ADS 1115 chip. Mm-hmm. And I plugged it in and I was going to learn how to use it and I was going to make it work. I kept failing. 5 months of me, just puttering with it on the weekend until I learned I'm sending the data in the wrong format. Now I can use that chip. Now I can measure all those measurements and stuff. But it would have been very easy for me to just go, you know what? I can't figure this out. I'm going to do something else. And if you do that, you're not going to succeed. If you have a problem, you have to search for the reasons it's not working. Collaborate with friends that may know a little bit more than you do. To go online. You've got such a tremendous amount of things available to you. When I was growing up, there weren't, a computer, only like a big business would have a computer. The schools didn't have a computer. You did not have a smartphone. Today, if somebody asks me a question and I don't know, I'll go, wait a minute, hold on. And I'll get them an answer in very short order. That's an amazing thing to have. And unfortunately, I find with many of my students, I'll ask them a question and they'll just go, I don't know. And I'm like, no, don't say, say, okay, I don't know. Give me a second. I want to look this up and come back with an answer, even if it's a wrong answer, because then we can work on it and find out why you believe this when it was actually that. Or you'll come up with maybe a better way. You'll say, hey, Jerry, you told me to do this now. And I'll say, wow, I've been doing this for a long time, but the technology has passed my skill set. And then I learned something new. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, to get in there and to do something and to, when you do fail, figure out what went wrong. Look into it. Find that new way to go, find a different method of doing it. Then you'll be successful.
Wow. This is mind-blowing. Get your hands dirty. Do the research. Note your ideas. When you get something wrong, do the research again. So keep doing it until you get it. Oh, I love that. So be willing to push your brain into thinking out an answer. That is actually a mindset we must cultivate while getting started with tech. So also, sir, now, some of these young persons, there's this thing called knowledge drag. They want to learn everything. You see someone doing embedded system design, you want to learn embedded system design. You see someone doing software development, just as I do, maybe using JavaScript. You want to learn JavaScript. You see someone using PHP to design, you want to learn PHP. You see someone doing well in data analysis, you want to go into data analysis. You see someone doing well in graphic design. So You see, there are plethorias of skills to learn. Like you said, we have to keep our mind open. But in such a situation where you have limitless resources, limitless emphasis on limitless resources to learn from, how can someone pick a skill? How can someone pick a skill in that manner? How can someone pick a skill being that you have all the resources you need, but you don't just know where to pick from? You don't just know where to start. In your case, before, because you joined the military and you are provided bonuses and all that stuff, you went into communications. But in this case, we don't have that opportunity to be given reward to learn a skill. We want to learn it because we want to better off our future. So the question here is, how can someone pick it up? How can someone pick when you have all these resources on the internet, like what the first speaker said? You can go online now, go to Udemy, go to Coursera, go to Udacity. You can pick up some of these diplomas. How can someone pick up a skill now when you have so many resources to learn from?
Well, again, it breaks down to necessity is the mother of invention. It breaks down to your needs. So there's PHP, there's JavaScript, there's ASP, there's BASIC, there's all these different languages, okay? So I wanted to accomplish something, and I looked at the languages, and I learned JavaScript. Then later on, I realized that I was something, but I wanted to have it operate on the other side of the server so the user couldn't mess with it. And I looked at ASP and I looked at PHP. And I noticed that some of the people that I was with, some of the people that I interacted with knew PHP. So I said, well, I could learn ASP or PHP and both will accomplish the task. I've got a server that I rented space on that supports PHP. Therefore, it makes a logical sense. And so I learned PHP. Okay. So not only is it, skill sets, but you've got to look at, what your needs are. I needed to create a web page. I needed to create some interactivity. And so then what I did was I had to evaluate what is available to me, what is not available to me. And I said, this is available. Will it do the job? Yes. Okay, this is available. Will it do the job? Yes. Is there any other applications? Well, this one I could do this, this, and this, and this one I do not. So it made this the obvious choice. And so you've got to pick your things out. And you've got to learn them sequentially. I tried teaching somebody basic programming, and they said, I want to write a word processor. This was decades ago. And I said, well, no, first what we need to do is we need to learn this, this counter, and then we need to learn this if-then statement. No, but I want to write a word processor. Let's start there. And I'm like, you will never learn basic. You will never learn the code. And they got upset with me. And the problem is, it's like, any one of you guys saying, I want to fly an aircraft. I'm going to jump into the cockpit and I'm going to figure it out. No, you're going to die. You have to learn the steps. Okay, I want to learn to fly an airplane. Okay, fine. Well, you're going to take lessons, and they're going to say, okay, you need to do this. You need to do this and never do this. Why never do this? Well, this will happen. If you just jump in and say, I'm going to do it without any plan, it's not going to end well for you. So like people want to get into electronics and they're like, I want to get into electronics. I've got an Arduino and yeah, I got all kinds of stuff within reach here. I've got my Arduino and now I'm ready to go. I'm going to master everything. And I'm like, all right, let's start with blinking and LED, and they're like, no, I want to run these motors and hook these steppers up. I'm like, no, you want to start with lighting an LED. Oh, no, okay, fine. If I give you 9 volts and an LED that runs on 2.5 volts at 20 milliamps, what's the proper resistor? And the answer that I usually get is like that, because they don't have the basic skill set. And I said, you need that basic skill set or you're never going to advance. So what I say is if somebody wants to get into something, I don't care whether you want to learn to be a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician or whatever. What you have to do is you have to say, I want to do this. What skill sets are required? And then pick one of those skill sets and learn it well. And then pick another one and keep going until you then amass a toolbox in your mind of different skill sets. Now you can begin to move forward. And as you move forward, you'll notice that there's some discrepancies in your mental toolkit. And you'll say, okay, this is something I must learn. So, and it never stops. I've been doing this kind of electronics and so forth since 1981. All right. And, I'll be working at work in my present job, and they'll give me a task, and I'll look at that task and I'll go, I don't know how to do that. And so I have to learn how to do it, even if it means going to one of my peers and saying, look, I can do this to this, but I don't know how to do this. And then they teach me, and then I can move forward. It stops. But you've got to be willing to learn. You've got to be willing to admit when you don't have a skill set and go to somebody that can help you. We had a job, and this is hundreds of thousands of dollars, very high skilled job. And it had to be designed. We had people that had to install it. And then it had to be turned on, and it had to be set properly, because if it's not, in radio communications, if you send out a bad signal, the bad signal can jam the communications. So just think of this. Some fireman is inside of a building, and he's trying to rescue people, and he falls down, and part of the roof pins him in a fire. And he picks up his radio, and he goes to call for help, and he goes, bonk, bonk, and it doesn't work. And he dies.
Yeah.
That can happen. All right. So when we do these systems, you've got to do it right. And I asked somebody, do you know how to turn this system on? Oh, yeah, not a problem. So they went out there. They didn't know what they were doing. They said it wrong. And for 2 city blocks, it shut down all the communications for 4 hours.
Whoa.
For 4 hours, they could not communicate. And this was at a factory. Luckily, it wasn't the police department, but nobody could communicate. So, the manager is seeing that there's a problem on a conveyor belt and stuff, and he goes, dun, 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 goes to talk, and I get called out there, Jerry, get out there quick. There's something wrong, and we don't know what it is. And I go in there, look, and the power settings are all wrong. All this person had to do is say, I have not done one of these types. I've done this and this, but I've never done this one. And I'd have gone out there with him and watched him over his shoulder and said, okay, hold on, here's the problem. You need to adjust this. And there would have never been a problem with the customer. But say, I do this. And you say, oh, sure, I can do it. The same thing with my students. Last weekend, we were working on the like I told you, with the LED. Do you know how to calculate this properly? Yeah. What's the resistor you're supposed to use? Oh, this. I'm like, okay, prove it to me. And then I'm sitting there staring at a blank screen, no response. I go, you still there? Because they couldn't say, I don't know how to do this step. It's important. It's very important. If I owned a company, and I hired you, Victor, and I said, here's a big customer. It's thousands of dollars. I need you to go out here and do this. And you turned around to me and said, hey, this part I don't know. Can you show me how to do it? I would have said, sure, hold on a minute. Jim knows how to do that. I'm going to send him out with you. And the customer would be happy. Versus you saying, sure, I know how to do it. And then now the customer is not happy. And if they're not happy, they're just not this customer and say, don't use them. They don't know how to do anything. And then this customer is going to go to this customer, and they're going to tell them. And the next thing you know, you've got 50 customers, and they all say, don't go there.
And your business is
It's not good. So the biggest thing is, no matter what you're going to get into, you've got to learn the little steps. And if you get into a situation where you don't know, go to your resources. Like me with that chip, I went online to the Gambus forum, Gambus is the name of the programming language I was using. I said, hey, does anybody else have a problem with this? And somebody said, you know what? It could be the way you're sending the data out and stuff. Me being thick-headed, I said, no, I got this. I didn't have this. I was sending the data backwards. And so the chip was looking at me going, what do you want? As soon as I figured it out, it worked. So you got to be open-minded and you got to go to people that, can help you.
Wow. This is so much. You have to admit your limitations. Don't claim you know when you don't know anything. It's very dangerous. You must learn the basics of everything before going to the next one. So wow, that's so very much, sir. That's so very much information. So much information we've gotten already. So
Well,
the two.
communications is pivotal. A few years back, NASA was getting ready to launch a rocket. Okay, rocket went up, it went like this, and it went boom. There's millions of dollars. And when they got into it and started looking, the problem was that this guy was working in feet and inches. This guy was working in feet and inches. This guy was working in metric. And when he said set this thing for 50, he meant 50 millimeters,
Hmm.
not 50 inches. And so the math for the guidance system was off. So they didn't communicate. If they'd have simply communicated, and said, oh, wait, hold on, this is in metric, we need to convert that. Or, this is in feet, we need to convert metric, there wouldn't have been a problem. So, communications it's pivotal, so whatever field you get into and you get on a project, communicate, make sure that you fully understand what they're asking you, make sure that everything's understood by both parties. For example, we were getting ready to do a system for a building, and it was called two different buildings. They called it, the Adam building and the Haynes building. And the two buildings were like this. They're connected, right? So it's actually one structure. And they wanted coverage for their radios in here. And they were like, yeah, if we could, we'd get it in both. So you put $50,000 worth of electronics in this building to cover it. But for this building, you've already got the electronics. All you need to do is put 4 antennas. The antennas are a couple $100. So for only a couple $100 more, we could do the entire structure. And the customer's like, yeah, let's do that. But the customer came back and said, and I want to include Verizon, and I want to include AT&T, and I want to, and all these cellular carriers, without asking about it first. And I said, sure, the price tag on that's going to be $500,000. And they're like, well, wait a minute, we did this whole building here. When we did this one, it was only a couple hundred. And I was like, yeah, but you want this, this, and this. And it's $50,000 for this system, and it's $50,000 for this system, and it's $50,000 for this system, plus all the associated antennas. And because it's a higher frequency, these antennas don't work. We need another set of antennas. And because the frequency's higher, the antennas don't cover as far. We need more of them, and so they kind of got their feelings hurt when we came with the new price, and we had to explain and set the expectations for them, so you got to make sure that you have that. Again, it breaks down to communication. You have to make sure that everybody is on the same page and has the same expectations.
Wow, interesting. Interesting. This is very very interesting. Now, two more questions, sir. I would want to ask. Now, you have both software and hardware skills. I'm very very very. Should I say I'm jealous of that? You are my mentor. I won't be jealous of my mentor. Rather, I want to learn from my mentor. So, how if I am for one, I know how to manipulate the softwares. I'm not very good with the hardwares. Now we have some persons on this call, they don't know what to do. Well, we said necessity is the mother of inventions. But now they don't really have any need. They just want to learn a skill. We are in an environment whereby digital skills is the order of the day, and it actually earns you some extra cash if you know what you're doing. Hardware skills now, which is electronics design, they don't really pay much. Software skills, you easily get the jobs and they pay well at, they give you instant gratification when you know what to do. This is just a case scenario now. So my question now is, should the monetary reward be the basis of our choosing a skill?
To some extent, I would say yes. All
Okay.
right. However, you have to look at quality of life.
Okay.
All right. So if I can do this and it nets me this amount of money, but my head hurts because it's so much work for me and I'm working late hours and everything else. But if I do this job and I make that much, but I can sit there and finish it off and go, okay, I'm done for the day and I can go and relax. I'm going to take that one because I will have a better quality of life. I'll have the opportunity to work on my projects, to do some study for my stuff. Whereas with the other one, I'll be burned out and too tired to do anything. And I've done both kinds of jobs, so I know what that's like. I know what it's like to work on a job and then you're on call and you get to go out. Don't get finished until 6 in the morning. You have a cup of coffee and you show back up and you do another 8 to 10 hours worth of work. And then, that night, you do it again. And that's not something I'd want to do. It's like, no, I need some time for me. The thing is, you're talking about the skill sets. Well, the skill sets go hand in hand depending on what you're doing. So, like, I like to do robotics. In robotics, there's a triangle. All right, you have physical. You have to make some kind of a mechanical device that moves. You've got electronics. Some kind of a motor is going to run that, and there's going to be some kind of sensors on that. That's the electronics. And then you have the other part of the triangle, which is the software. And the software has to be able to read these, and it has to be able to send the signal to the motor to move this mechanical device, right? So there's all three skill sets, and each one of them is important. You can't say, I'm just going to do the software. Okay, then you've got something that's going to screen, but you don't have something that's going to run in the physical world. Or you can say, I'm just going to concentrate on the mechanical. All right, fine. You're going to hire somebody else to do the software, and you're going to hire somebody else to do the electronics. And sometimes that's viable. But what you need to do is you need to figure out what you want to do, and then you've got to break it down into some tasks. And then you've got to ask yourself, how do I want to do this? Like, now there's things like Fiverr. Have you heard of Fiverr? It's
Yes.
it's one of these online sites you can go to and say, I want somebody to do something. So I can do animation. I can take some graphics and I can manipulate them and make them walk and do stuff like that. I'm fairly good at that. I'm not great at it, but I can do it. Okay. Can I draw? No, not very well. I'm not an artist. Okay. But I can go to Fiverr and I can pay somebody to create the artwork, and then I can take the artwork and cut that artwork up and manipulate it. So for me, it's like, am I going to let this stop me from doing what I'll do? No. How do I approach it? And sometimes you outsource. You hire somebody to do it, and sometimes you learn how to do it. But only you can make that decision. There's no hard and fast rule for it, depending on what you are trying to do. you know and for every job skill, everything is different. So only you can sit there and make that decision of, do I need to learn another skill? Is there somebody that I can hire to do this with me? And you have to look at it. And if you do have to hire somebody, you think of it like a tool. If I'm going to do some woodworking, I can't do it without a saw. I need that. And in some things I need somebody's skill. I'm not good on databases. I don't do SQL databases. Somebody asked for some help with a web page. So I showed them the basics. We got the basic framework and everything set up about the database. And I said, this is my friend Mark. He'll help you, because that was his strong point, not mine.
Wow. You have to look at your quality of life before choosing a skill. It's very, very important. You can't be working 9 to 5, a job from 9 to 5, and you want to pick a job that takes you 7 hours to complete. You will just overburn yourself. You will not have time to rest. At the end of the day, while learning a skill, you might fall sick. So you have to consider your quality of life apart from the money, the monetary reward. Very, very important.
Not, I wasn't talking about 7 hours. I was talking about working a 16-hour day.
Wow. That
And
is
I've done that. And, actually, what happened was last year or the year before, I was working a job and they said, we need you to do this, this, and this. Fly out here and do this, this, and this. I said, okay. And then at night they said, we need these reports done. And I said, okay. And I did it, right? And then the next day I had to do this, this, and this. And I was like, at least I'll get a good night's sleep tonight, right? And I get back and they said, we need these reports. We need this done. This has to be done by tomorrow. And I'm saying, I can't. I got to get, you will do it. You got to do it. And I said, okay. So I did. And I got up in the morning and I did this site and I did this site. And then I had to drive from one state to another for the next day. And I'm driving along and I went, and I fell asleep and crashed the car, took out 85 feet of guardrail, destroyed the vehicle. Luckily, I wasn't hurt. And I was like, that's never going to happen again.
sure.
That's never going to happen again. So you've got to
Consider your
evaluate
health
it.
while learning a skill. Wow.
So now, they'll tell me, hey, we need you to do this. I've worked 10 hours today. Normally I work 8. I've worked 10. I worked that extra and I finished this project. I'm done for the day. I'm not doing any more. It will happen tomorrow. But we promised it to them. Can't help it that you promised it to the cut. But we need you to do this. Yeah, well, I need to win the lottery and it doesn't look good for either of us. It's no, you have to set limits. You do.
have to set limits. Important. Wow. So one last one, sir. Now we have so many young persons here. I've had some persons that they've indicated interest. They want to learn UI and UX design. Some want to learn data analysis. Some are choosing both web development, mobile development. Some of them are even going as far as saying they want to learn artificial intelligence and machine learning. What do you have to say? Because we are about 30 on the call. What do you have to, more than 30, because we have some friends live on Facebook currently streaming this event. What do you have to tell them? You have plectorials of skills to learn. Necessity will make you choose one. Now you've considered your lifestyle, you've chosen that skill. How can they attain mastery in a particular skill set? Or should they just learn it per need? If you need to build a website, you learn web development. You need to build a mobile app, you learn mobile development. You want a desktop application, you learn desktop development. You want to, should that be their mindset? Or if they pick a skill, should they attain mastery before moving on to the next one? Give a general overview of your experience thus far. I think that would be just some part of your session before I come in with my slide.
If you were to invite me for dinner, would you learn how to make this meal, or would you go to a culinary school for 2 years and study every single bit of how to make all of the different things? You would learn how to do this meal, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to look at what your needs are. Okay. I need in my line of work to have certain skill sets. All right. I need to be able to program in VBA for Excel and so forth. I need to be able to do some things I do, like circuit board design. I told you I don't have to reach very far. I've got all this stuff. So, I had to learn how to do circuit board design, which is a reach for my job, but it needed to be done. So I learned it. Would I say that I'm an expert in that field? No, I'm not. I learned enough to get through and finish that job because nobody else could do it, And so what you have to do is you have to look at the skills that you need. And there's some of them that you need to be familiar with and have some working knowledge of. And then there's the ones that you use every day, and you must be an expert in the field. You must be an SMA, subject matter expert. Do I have to be an expert on every single thing I do? No, there's a few things that I just need to be very familiar with. I use Visio to make some of the documentations. Do I need to know every single command that Visio has? No, but I need to know enough to be able to do my job, to do it, do a good thing well. And then if I'm doing it and I come up to a point where I don't know something, then I can stop and go online and take a look. Like for Excel, I've been programming Excel since 1998. And every now and then I'll be on a project and I'll be like, I need to be able to do this and this. And I'll think about it and I won't understand it. And I'll say, okay, hold on. And I'll go to the forum and I'll search it. And somebody will go, hey, I need this, do what I need to do. And I read down and I learn what they did. And then I try it out and I go, okay, I've learned that extra step that I need. And there's still things in Visual Basic that I don't know in VBA for Excel. And I've been programming it since 98, So you have to pick and choose, for what I'm doing right now is I'm programming radios for the police department and stuff. I need to know all of this stuff. And so I made a point to learn all of it, But then there's some other things that I do that, as long as I know the basics, I can get the job done. And once in a while, I have to do a little bit of additional research. So it's a balance. And it's very individualized. I can't say to somebody, hey, Victor, you're going to do this. You need to learn all of this. For example, you're learning how to do your YouTube page, right? You're making your YouTube channel. And so, I can tell you, hey, you need to look at your lighting better because, you're dark skinned, you're up against a light background, you look more like a shadow. You need to work on without, doesn't mean that you have to know every single thing about all the microphones and the different resolutions. And no, right now you work on that one thing and then you evaluate and you say, okay, this is something that's not working right for me. I'm listening to the audio and it doesn't sound right. Why? And then you learn about microphone placements and stuff like that and setting your audio levels. And you do it one step at a time. If you watch some of my first videos on YouTube, they're horrible. They're just, when I'm doing an introduction, I look at it now and I'm like, oh, would you just shut up and show me how to do it? And now more recently I've learned to say, hey, today we're going to learn this and keep it short and then get to it. In storytelling or any kind of education, it's the rule of three. You tell somebody what you're going to teach them, you teach them, and then you tell them what you told them,
Please, can you
So
come
like,
over with that again? I think it's a very important point that some of us might have missed. The three T's.
yeah, well, when you're doing any kind of an explanation, when you're teaching a skill set, it's the rule of three. And a good teacher will use the rule of three. So you tell somebody what you're going to teach them, you teach them how to do it, and then you tell them what you told them. So for example, if you'd never heard of math before, I would say, I'm going to teach you addition. We're going to be able to take two numbers, add them together, and come up with a result. And then you'll go in and you'll say, these are the numbers 1 through 10, and if you take a 2 and you add it to a 2 and you show them in the sets how it works, and they go, okay, I understand that. And then at the end, you have a refresher. We work with numbers from 1 to 10, and then they repeat, and we can add two numbers together to get a third number. So you tell them, 3 times what you're going to teach them, you teach them, and then what you told them, to do a summary. And that's what you need to do. And when you're doing your career, you've kind of got to go to do that to yourself. You have to say, okay, for this, I need to learn this skill set, programming JavaScript. I'm going to learn JavaScript. And then you go in there and you learn JavaScript. And then you say to yourself, okay, I've learned JavaScript. I'm weak on this, and I'll make a point to study it later. And you evaluate that in your mind. And you just kind of keep doing that for every step that you do. You use the rule of three. You figure out what you need, you study it, you look at your deficiencies, and you go on again. If you're presenting, tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them, and then tell them what you just told them, summarize it.
Wow. I, I will describe this in my room. So when I wake up every morning, I'll see you have to tell them what you tell yourself what you want to learn, you learn it, and you summarize what you've learned to actually know your deficiency. So those are the three methods for us to
Right.
actually pick up a new skill. So the very, very last one before I present my slide will be we're having a boot camp after this onboarding session, and we have about 4 skill sets we want to learn. And is there a way for us to actually filter the kind of resources we use? Because there are so many resources out there. Some of them will misinform you, or rather, will give you so many garbage, they pack so many garbages in your brain, which are not actually the verified or the right information for you to learn. For example, I can see a course that can tell me that I can learn JavaScript for 1 month and become an expert. That particular course will skip some of the basics I have to know about JavaScript, arrays, different types of statement, the conditional statements, different kinds, the types of looping, dictionaries, and it's like they will skip some of those parts. They will just pick me to writing commands, consoling the commands, building scripts with the commands. Is there a way or is there a method we should use to filter the kind of information we learn with, or the kind of resources we learn with?
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, it's research. I wanted to do animation, okay? And so there's Unreal Engine, there's Blender, there's Crazy Talk, there's, Maya, there's, all these different ways that you can do animation. And so what I had to do is I had to evaluate them. Okay, well, here's Maya. Maya is going to cost me $3,000 for a couple. That's not going to happen. I can't afford that. Well, there's Blender. Okay, well, with Blender, I can do a lot of stuff, but Blender has a very difficult user interface, and it's going to take you a while to learn that interface. And all right, well, I'm going to put that on the shelf here. I'll consider that. Is there? Well, there's Crazy Talk. You can just click on it and circle the eyes, and then you can pick these animations and make them blink or nod their head. I was like, well, that's useful. I can do that. I'm going to go that route. And so I started doing that route. And then later on, I said, okay, I need to do something else, which this doesn't do easily. What else is there? And I found one called Synfig. And I said, okay, well, Synfig's got, this capability and that capability. So I've learned these two. They're both free. This one over here is the one they use for movies and stuff. Would I like to do that? Yeah. But I'm looking at, 5,000 hours to learn that versus, 10 hours to learn this. So you have to look into what your tools are, and you have to evaluate, what do I need to get this accomplished? And even if it's not the best one in the world, I wanted to do woodworking. Okay, and there's you want to cut the parts out of the wood, and you want it to be really good, and everything else. Well, there's a jigsaw called an Excalibur. It works almost like a laser. I mean, they're phenomenal. Also a little more expensive. And then there's the smaller hobby ones. Well, for what I needed to do, the smaller hobby one would work. And so I got it and I did the jobs that I needed to do. And then later on, when I got into more complex things and I had saved my money, I bought the Excalibur. I've got that, that jigsaw now, and it can do some incredible, stuff. So sometimes you just have to look and you have to say, yes, I want to do this, but right now this will get the job done. And this one will get the job done. And you go, okay, what's the pros and cons? Photoshop. Everybody's like, oh, Photoshop, it's great. It's da-da-da-da-da. And it's like $30 a month, right? And it's like, all right, am I doing enough graphics to where it's worth that investment to me? No, I'm not a graphical engineer. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm just using, creating some stuff for my diagrams for my YouTube page. I don't need that level of stuff. And so I looked at Inkscape. Inkscape does everything I wanted to do. There's two programs I use, Inkscape and GIMP. Both of them are free programs. And I do all my stuff, but people argue, oh no, you have to have Photoshop, you have to have this. And I'm like, well, these two programs are $60 a month. If you're, doing it professionally, sure, then you might want to make that investment. But for me, I'll use it 3 days out of a month. It's not worth it for me. So you have to evaluate, look at, what the cost is, look at what the benefits are, look at what the cost is, what the benefits are. Excuse me. Which one is going to accomplish what you need to get done? I do building designs, and I use called IBWave. All right, that software is $34,000. All right, but if you're going to do the building design, there's nothing else that'll do that. So our company had to make the investment, $34,000 for that software, so that we could do it properly. If I was, designing a small system for your house, would I go out and spend $34,000 just to design a system for your house? No, I would do something else, even if that something else meant, just hiring somebody's services for the one time for a couple $100. So you have to evaluate what your needs are, what your resources are, and then make the determination of, what you want to do. Circuit boards. EagleCAD, EagleCAD will do it. EagleCAD's going to cost you, so much a month. Everything's going to subscriptions now, so much a month or whatever, right? But then there's another one called Fritzing. Fritzing is designed for the people that want to know a project. Well, guess what? If you and I are working on a small project and I can do it in Fritzing, why not? Why do I have to spend all that extra money? Now, if I'm doing something and it really needs all the features of the other one, I'm going to do it, even if it means including the cost of that into the job. But that's what you need to do. You need to evaluate what your needs are and, what the cost and what the benefits are. And then there's something called an ROI. It's a return on investment. Have you heard that term?
Yes, sir.
So you have to do an ROI, and you have to say, okay, this is going to cost $10,000. Am I going to get more than $10,000 worth back from it? No. That's a bad idea. This costs, like Fritzing, €8. Am I going to get €8 worth of use? Oh yeah, I can do this and this and this and this and this. Very worthwhile. Then for me, that's the way I'm going to go. And you have to make those decisions. And it breaks down to doing your research. If you're not willing to put the research in, I don't care what you're looking to do, both a hobby or your work, your livelihood. If you don't put the research in, you're not going to do well.
Well, thank you very much. If you don't do the research, you are not going to do very well. So everyone out there listening to me right now, the word for today, the key word for today that we should go home with for this session is, if you don't do the research, you won't do well. So if we start learning a skill after now, I expect you all to do the research. Even as we learn, do the research. Don't expect that just the resources that I'll provide for you will just be that you just concentrate your attention on that. No, that will be wrong. So thank you very much, sir. Your session has been so amazing. So many people have been asking for the recording because they know they have to replay this over and over and over and over again for it to actually sink in. So I'll look for a way to provide the recording to them also. So thank you so very much. So we'll be going to the last session for today, make the announcements, and that will be all. So I'll be presenting now. I'll be presenting my screen now, and all right, now I believe you all can see my screen, right? Can you see my screen, please?
No, sir, we cannot.
Can you see it now?
Yes, now we can see it.
Yes, okay.
All right, now I'll be presenting my screen now, and
not to interrupt you, but is that PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Hit F5 to make it full size.
Okay. All right. I
Or
think it's full
go
size now.
until begin slideshow.
It's full size now.
And no, we're still there. You go. Yep, there you go.
All right. Now there's a slide that our Professor Jacqueline ought to present, but she's indisposed for now. Now, getting started with tech. Now, this program is supported by my friend and my friend Lewy. He's a staff software engineer at Tesla and the CEO and founder of LLC Systems. And also, our daddy currently speaking to us is also a supporter of this program. You can go on YouTube right now and search out his handle, Ask Jerry. Quickly subscribe. Quickly go there and subscribe. You won't regret doing that. Now, this is it. My presentation is very brief. Demystifying the software engineering career. Demystifying the software engineering career. Now, what is the aim of this? What's the aim of this presentation actually? Now, this presentation is actually aimed at those persons that want to go into software development. Not everybody will code, not everybody will write the codes, but this presentation is actually aimed at those that want to go into coding specifically, but along the line will divert to non-coding skills. Now, it's aimed at giving you clarity and what to choose from. Now, this is the agenda. Who is a software developer? Some of the languages will be considering some of the languages, some of the developers track, some of the tools you use, some of the career paths you should take as a software developer, then non-coding skills like sorry, non-coding skills like UI and UX design will also be considered. Now, who is a software developer? A software developer is someone that analyze, design, create, and test piece of computer softwares. Let me go over it again. You analyze, you design, you create, and you test them. Now you can see this, you can see the diagram here. This diagram now, it shows you that as a software developer, you must have these 4 skill sets. If you see a problem, analyze that. You have to look for a way to analyze that problem, know what the problem is all about. Like our speaker said, you have to do your research, you analyze the problem, then you design a solution for it. The design can be a prototype. You can actually sketch out the particular way, the ways, the pattern it should follow to solve the problem, the data flow. Then you create it with certain computer codes and languages, which is actually the creating aspect. But you can't actually go into creation without necessarily designing. That's why you will get stuck if you actually don't design your solution before going into the creation aspect. Thereafter, you do the testing. It's when you test it and it actually solves the problem that you are trying to solve the problem you're trying to solve, then you say you are actually a software developer. Without these, you can't call yourself a software developer. Also, in a nutshell, this is what a software developer is. A software developer makes use of data structure and algorithm to bring out a software or launch a product. That is a software developer, a software engineer, a software developer for you in a nutshell. You have to know how the data you are going to use, how the data are structured. You have to know how they are structured. You can't put, for example, in HTML, you can't put a body before the header. You can't put a body before the head, or you can't put a footer before the body. There are structures, there are data structures that it must follow. Now the algorithm, how your data is going to flow in this program. Are you going to register? If you want to register a new user in your website, for example, now, how this data is going to be collected, how are they going to be stored, how are they going to retrieve? In other words, if the user forgets his or her password, how is he or she going to retrieve it back? These are some of the things you have to do your research on, and when you know these things, putting them together makes you a software engineer in a nutshell. And everything you are trying to do is geared towards solving a problem. Problem solving is actually what makes a software engineer. Problem solving is at the center of everything you'll be doing. So the next slide will be, which is the creating. There are some languages that software developers use for the web. For web developers, there's languages. For mobile developers, there are languages. For databases, there are languages you must learn. For a front end developer, you want to learn front end development. You have HTML, CSS, JavaScript. CSS has its framework. JavaScript has framework. We'll not dive into that, but during our class session, we'll be diving into some of these in details. Now you have back-end skills. You have Node.js, Python, PHP, JavaScript, Ruby, Go, C hash, C++. These are back-end languages. Just take them as you see them. Later on, we'll demystify them in the class. Now, for mobile developers, you want to be developing applications for mobile apps. You have Java as a language for developing mobile applications. Java is actually your system is system intensive. You can actually learn Java. You can learn Kotlin. Kotlin is Java simplified. Kotlin is Java simplified. Then you can learn Dart or Flutter. Flutter is actually Google. It's a language developed by Google that you can actually use. Then you see your React Native, which is actually a framework from JavaScript also. Then for Swift, for iOS, you can learn Swift or Dart or React Native. So, in other words, React Native and Flutter, they actually cross-platform. You can use learning them. You can use them to build applications for both Android and iOS devices. Then, for your database, you have the SQL database, you have PostgreSQL, you have SQLite, MS SQL. These are all SQL. SQL means structural query language. It's a database language that you can learn. They have the NoSQL. These are, for SQL, SQL presents your data, your database in columns and rows, while NoSQL databases presents your data in a JSON or document format, in a list format. Example is the MongoDB, Redis. You have the main cache DB, and you have also Firebase database, which also used for database. You can learn some of these skills. Now, this is just a picture of some of the skills. Now, next slide will be a software developer can specialize in any of these tracks. You can become a web developer, you can become a mobile developer, you can become a cloud developer, or you can become a technical support engineer. Like our father rightly mentioned in the previous session, you can have a general knowledge of these things and how to manipulate them. You can actually become a technical support engineer. Now, for web development, you have front end, you have back end. Now, in details, the HTML, which is the basics of web development, you can learn that. The CSS is, you have Bootstrap, you have Twindo CSS, you have Foundation. These are all aspects of CSS you can learn to become a front end developer. You have JavaScript, you have the React JS, Angular JS, Vue.js. There are so many JavaScript framework you can learn to become a front-end web developer. Or you can jump into back-end development. Back-end development, you have your Node.js, which you use together with your Express.js, and you have Shape APIs. Then for Python, you can learn Flask or Django. For PHP, you can learn Laravel. For Ruby, you can learn Ruby on Rails. Then Java, you can learn Spring. Like I said the other time, Java can be used in developing mobile application. You can also learn Java, but the aspect of Java you'll be learning to become a backend developer is actually Spring. Like I previously mentioned in the previous slide, you can learn C hash and C++. They are the back-end languages you can learn. And a combination of both front-end and back-end technologies, in other words, learning both front end and back end makes you a full stack developer. In other words, you know both the front end and the back end. When I mean front end, those are what the user interacts with, the user interface, what the user see. The back end is where the manipulation of what the user sees are actually done. Then database is actually where the user information is stored and retrieved. Now, for mobile developer, you can become an Android developer or an iOS developer, or you can choose to be a cross-platform developer. You can see them in the slide. For Java, Kotlin, actually for Android development. Swift is for for iOS development. Then for cross-platform, You can learn React Native or Flutter. It's actually cross-platform. Cross-platform in the sense that learning this language, you can use it across board. You can use it across board. In other words, use it for Android and iOS development. I believe you can hear me. Now, you can become a cloud developer. A cloud developer, you can become a cloud architect using infrastructure as a service, or can become a cloud developer using platform as a service. Example of platform, you have your Azure, you have the Google cloud platforms. There are different platforms. You can choose to become a cloud developer, choose a particular area, do your research in that particular area, and choose to be that. Then you have the cloud DevOps. These people, they maintain cloud infrastructures, but you cannot maintain something you don't know. So it's very necessary you learn to become a cloud architect or a cloud developer using infrastructure as a service or platform as a service for you to become a DevOps engineer. And you can see from this picture here right now, in cloud computing, that's where the server, your storage, your application, your database, this is where they all work. In other words, everything we are doing right now using Google Meet is actually being processed in a cloud platform. That's cloud computing. You can actually learn how it works. Learning it very well and being skilled at it makes you a cloud developer. Now, technical support. Technical support, you support the customer using software as a service. In other words, you use some particular software to assist customers. You can use Zoom, Google Meet. There are different platforms you can actually use to support your customers, but you have to first of all learn how this platform work, and you become a technical support engineer. Some of us have gone to some online some online platforms to want to get softwares, and we got stuck. You can actually contact a customer support or a technical support that pulls you through. These are some skills you can learn and become a developer. These are some development skills you can learn. Now, DevOps, these are some core tools that you should use as a developer. You have the editors, you have the terminals, you have the browser. Example of the editors, if you want to be developing with Python, you have PyCharm, you have NetBeans for developing, also for mobile development using Java. You can use Android Studio also using Java. You can use Android Studio for Flutter also. Now you have text editor such as Atom, VS Code, and Brackets. You can use Flutter for VS Code to develop mobile applications also. Now also you have terminals, command line interface. If you want to be writing scripts, you have to be using terminals. These are command line interface, and they are very, very necessary for you to learn. You have different types of browsers, and these browsers, they enable you to debug what you are trying to build, most especially the web developers, either front end or back end. Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, Microsoft Edge, these are all consoles, developer consoles that you can use to debug your applications that you are building. Now, these are career paths. These are career paths that you can actually choose from when you have actually chosen a skill. You just become a coder, coding, building templates, writing certain codes from scratch, reinventing things that are already existing, modifying them. You can become a coder. You can become a junior developer. Junior developer, in other words, you are not actually an expert in that field yet, but you are skilled enough. You are skilled enough to manipulate the code. You can become a junior developer, intermediate developer. You are good at using it. You can explain it to someone. Or you can become a senior developer. In other words, you've developed mastery in that particular area. Lead developer, leading other developers. You are already an expert with both the documentation, the in and out, and the routing of that particular language. Or you can become a tech lead. For example, is a CTO, Chief Technology Officers. These tech leads, they understand how things work. They understand data structures and algorithm, so they can actually lead a particular team in developing or outputting softwares. Now, there are non-coding roles also. These non-coding roles, you don't necessarily have to write codes. Like my mentor will always say, not everybody will code. Some persons will build prototypes. Some persons will write the documentation. Some persons will analyze the data that come out from the software you are trying to build, and some persons will enter this data to analyze them. So therefore, we'll be talking about 4 non-coding roles now, which is the UI and UX design, technical writing, data analysis, and data entry. Now, what is UI and UX design? UI and UX design actually talks about what the users see and how the user experience your app. The ease of use will make a user, the ease of usage will make a user want to come back to your site. Some of us might have used some applications that we could not really navigate. When the first speaker was actually making his point, he said that he could not actually, I think one of these softwares was very difficult for him to use because the interface was very complex. He could not use it. That alone actually tells you that the user interface was not properly planned out. Now, UI and UX design. UI, it talks about the color theory. How easy is the color of usage? For example, the slide I'm presenting, I'm using easy colors that will not be difficult for you to see. Topography, the text should be clear. The design pattern, is it that you are using wrong color coloration? You are using green, blue, yellow, red, black in the same platform or in the same screen. For example, this screen now, you see this place, I put in it yellow, here red. Everywhere will just be too busy for me to use. There are some persons that actually plan out these things. They are very good with color, they collaborate. Now, how user interacts with it, how the text animates, these are example of UI. Then the UX designer, the product strategy, the user research, information architecture, testing and iteration, putting the UI and UX designer together. Having these both skills, they create empathy, they collaborate, they do the design thinking, and they bring out a prototype. In other words, you don't necessarily have to code a software if you want to pitch it to an organization. If, for example, I'm building a software and somebody wants me to build a software for him or her, I don't have to code the person's idea and prototype it for them. I can actually use either Figma, Adobe SD, or different UI and UX designs platforms. I will create a prototype of this particular software. For example, this is a prototype. This particular thing you see here was not coded. This is a prototype, but it's already it's giving the user, or it's giving the my potential clients now how the software I'm going to build, how it's going to look like, how easy and how artistic it's going to look like. That is actually the job of the UI and UX designer. You can see the screen right now. It is very easy. The color coding is nice. Everything is neat. You easily want to use this software because it's attractive. That is the work of the UI and UX designer. So once it's approved, I can actually now take this design and go back to the development platform and code according to this approved design. This is not like graphic design because you can actually animate this one. So you are UI and UX designer. Some persons do call product designers or product design. All right, you have the analytics, data analysis. Each and every of our organization we work on data. For you to scale a product, you have to work on data. You have to work on data. You have to work on data. Data is life. My data scientists will tell you that for decisions to be made, they have to be analyzed. For Nigeria, for example, now our naira is falling. How do we know that the naira is worth almost 700 naira per dollar? How do we know this? It's because certain analysis has been done based on parameters, and they got to know that the economy is performing badly. We are in a retrogressive trend. There are some persons that analyze this data, and those persons are called data. Now they analyze and interpret the data. They are called the data analysts. Companies are looking for these people because they generate data every day, but they don't know what they want to do with those data. You as a data analyst now, you take those data, you mop up those data, you clean the data, you enter them, you analyze them, and you visualize them to make interpretations and tell them that, oh, the company is not doing well based on this metric, based on these analysis I have done on the certain metrics that were generated from our customer base. So we have to then suggest a solution to them. We have to follow this trend for it not to for us not to go bankrupt. That's for the businesses. Or you as an individual, you can actually analyze your daily performance based on certain parameters that you can set out for yourself, or parameters that the organization will set out for you. You analyze it based on them and you attribute them. You have to have a good knowledge of statistics for you to actually become a very good data analyst. You have to do your research. Then we have data entry. Some persons actually enter these data. For you to actually use this data, someone have to enter them. Data entry is actually a skill. And for you to simplify data entry, there are certain tools you need. Microsoft Excel is a very common and easy platform tool that we can learn or use to actually get started with data analysis. And also Python as a language, you can use Python for data analysis, also Python for data science. Python is a very broad language if you want to go. Arrow is a language. Jupyter Notebook is a tool you can use for data analysis. Apache Spark, SAS, Microsoft Power BI, Tableau, and Kimine. These are some tools or platforms that you can use for your data analysis. This is just a get started program, so don't expect me to go deeper into it. Now, thank you very much. I think that is to as far as I can go in getting started with software development and non-coding skills. Thank you very much. All right, thank you all. Thank you very much for staying to this very time. If you have any question, please, you can actually ask your question now. If you have a question, please. Please, do you have a question?
You got somebody with their hand up.
Okay, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and let's talk.
Okay, so I think I met your presentation halfway, but from some of the things I heard you say, like for example, I'm currently a legal practitioner and I work with a firm in Lagos. And sometimes I think about transitioning in my career. So if I'm thinking about transitioning, as somebody who is more experienced in this field, what are the areas that I can really look at, being that I don't have a background in coding, I don't have a background in the sciences. What is your advice in that regard? Thank you.
Right. Mr. Jerry Rutherford, please, sir, can you answer? Can you just give your expert view or before I come in?
I'm sorry. Go ahead and rephrase the question for me again.
Okay, the question is,
okay,
he grew up from a technical background, but he wants to get learning a skill, a digital skill. What advice do you have for him? Mr. Jack, I think I'm right.
So
yes,
you're saying,
let me come with that question again. In a nutshell, what I'm asking is, I'm currently a legal practitioner and I work with a tech law firm in Lagos State. So in some sense, I'm already in the tech world, but I just do in-house legal practitioner compliance work with my company. So if I'm looking at transitioning, what would you advise for a professional such as myself?
well, what are you looking at transitioning into? You've got to evaluate the new position. What type of skill sets are going to be required? So, for example, I was at a company, Nextel, and my job was working on the analog radios, and the analog radios were going away. But the company had a need to be able to get communications inside of buildings where it didn't currently exist. That's called DAS, distributed antenna systems. So I was like, okay, I can do this. what skills do I need? And then I, went on to learn those skills and made a transition. So what you have to do is you have to evaluate your skill set, figure out what you want to do in the company and what skill sets would be required. And the skill sets that you're deficient in that will be useful to you in that career field.
Thank you.
All right, I think I get that now. You have to look at your current situation and look for a skill that fits into
To
it.
like put that in a reverse, if I were going to transition into your field, I'm unfamiliar with legal documents. I'm unfamiliar with their needs. So I would end up having to talk to somebody and I would say, what type of, documents are you requiring? What kind of information? And then I would have to evaluate methods for me to obtain that information and to put it into the proper format. So then once you have that skill set, then you can make the transition.
Right, that's
Thank you
wonderful.
very much.
All right, so lawyers
You're welcome,
can
sir.
code too. All right, any other question, please? Okay, if there's no other question, I'll continue my presentation. I think that's well, I'm done with my own presentation, but going forward, if you have any other question, you can send it to me as a message and I will do very well to reply you accordingly. So this is okay. Let me go back to the slide. All right. I believe you can you see my slide, please? Okay.
Yes, it just came into view.
All right. We are at the question and answer session now. Some of us we've asked a very important question, and the program is giving solution to that question. Now, an important announcement is after now. Please, if you
Emmanuel, can you please mute your mic?
please mute
We're
your
getting a
mic.
lot of wind noise or background noise from you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Now, an important announcement is after now, like 53 of you have indicated interest that you want to learn a tech skill, and we've admitted you into the program. You must have received your email containing certain instructions. After this onboarding session, you will receive further instructions as to you receive further instruction to that particular skill that you have learned. I myself, together with Professor Jacqueline, who is not currently here now, will be sending you certain materials and resources and tasks alongside them. Once or twice in 2 weeks, we'll be having sessions like this where we'll unblock you in case you're having a problem. We unblock you, but rest assured that we'll be giving you from the ground up. But you still have to do your research, because at the end of every learning session, there will be a task for you to fulfill, and you'll be building on that task in and in and in. So of at the end of two, okay, that's at the end of 6 weeks, you should have built something, and you will group all of you, the 52 of you, 53 of you, okay, 52, you'll be grouped into, I think, four per group, and you will build a software. You will build a solution. Let's put it as that. You build a solution, and this solution will attract a cash prize. Like I said, one of our supporter have indicated interest in supporting the groups or individuals that we actually build a solution at the end of this learning process. The person of Mr. Lewy, the staff software engineer from Tesla, who is supporting this program, he have dutifully instructed me to tell all of you that at the end of this program, when if your solution, if you see your solution or what you're trying to solve and it actually carries good mark or carries something that solves a problem, he will reward it with a cash prize. So you should go all out, do your research, and uh, there is a reward for you to encourage you to go into tech. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is getting started with tech in a nutshell. That is getting started with tech in a nutshell. I believe you, for these past 2 hours, you must have learned a lot. You must have learned a lot, and I want to encourage you. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. See yourself as someone that see yourself as someone that is already that is ready to make giant step in dictating his or her future. If you have a tech skill, you don't necessarily have to be taking your file or your envelope around town trying to look for jobs. No, once you are good and you have you market yourself properly, you get the jobs. You can get remote jobs, you can get in-person jobs, on-site jobs that you have to travel there to see, and they won't price you cheap if you actually know what you are doing and you are skilled at them. So if there's any question you want to ask as regards choosing a tech skill, I've this session is being live streamed, and you can go back to replay it, and I can also download it into my system, edit it properly, upload it on YouTube. You can go there and actually pick it up, watch it over and over again, ask yourself some questions like the 3 T's. Tell yourself what you want to do. You teach yourself that thing you actually want to do. Then you summarize what you've learned if there's any deficiency. So you ask your questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Then those of you that have actually indicated interest to learn the tech skills, congratulations to you. You receive your mail after now containing link to this particular video and your tax, because the learning has started. Then those persons that are just getting to know that some persons have actually indicated interest to learn a skill, I don't know, maybe I can actually open the link up again one more time for say 2 hours after this meeting for you to actually indicate interest if you still want to learn. But if you feel this is enough for you for now before you picking interest to learn a skill, voila, I don't have a problem with you. I'm much available for you to actually give you the test skill. And notice those persons that have indicated interest now, you'll be learning it for free. You are not paying a dime for it. Some of the things you'll be learning have already been sponsored. They have been paid for. So you are on sponsorship now. But after now, if you still want to learn, you want in-person teaching and mentorship session, you can get across to me and we'll discuss those modalities. Thank you all very much, and God bless you. Thank you for joining us. So you can actually turn on your camera now. Let's have our group picture. I will stop the live. Okay, I will stop the live stream now. So the streaming we are going offline now. So those of us on Facebook that have been following us, thank you very much. Thank you very much for following us. I'll stop the live stream so we actually take our group picture. You can turn on your camera. So live stream is off now.